navigate this crazy thing called life? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to Unraveling with Rain. Hey guys, today I'm here with Susan Brady. She is a lactation consultant, but she has so much more to her story and how she got here, and so I'm super excited to learn all of the things and all of the adventures that you've gone on this journey, because when we were talking beforehand through emails and such, there was just so much more that kept coming out of your story, and I was like, oh my gosh, this woman, she's done so much. So thank you for coming and sharing with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really, really excited to be on a podcast.
Welcome to the world of podcasts.
That's right. This is really fun. And it's been so fun, like I was sharing when we were emailing, the chance to sort of unpack your own story when someone asks these questions and you suddenly start, oh, I have so much to say about myself and my journey. I think everyone likes to talk about themselves a little bit. But so that has been really fun. So I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, nice. So let's go back to when you first kind of talk about your schooling and like the firefighting and all of that, like from that place.
Okay, so I did like a real typical pathway, right? I'm like chugging through high school, graduated, what to do, and I ended up deciding to go to Central Washington University. It worked, right? I was like, okay, I'll go there. And so I'd started my undergrad there, and I needed to make some fast cash during the summers. And some of my family members, extended family, so aunts and uncles, generation before, they were firefighters, wildland firefighters, and I was like, that sounds like a really cool job. So I jumped into that. Looking back, I'm like, I really didn't think about that very much. I was like, here's an application, and I'm pretty sure they hired me because I'm a girl.
I think so. They had a quota to fill, maybe.
I think so. I don't know. I mean, that's horrible to say in a way. But I got the job, and I loved it, and I worked really hard at it. And what I loved the most about it was being outside all day, and we would have PT time to fulfill during the day, which you could do whatever you wanted to. But we would mostly just drive up because you'd be stationed out wherever around the Wenatchee Valley, which is where I was working out of, in the hills there, and to go running in the hills. I was really fit back then. Whew, so good. That's such a good feeling. And so going to university, right, I was like, oh gosh, gotta pick a major, what am I doing? And I picked biology, not because I'm incredibly skilled in any given area. And, you know, you're talking about the diversity of my story, if you want to, all the different things. That's part of it, is that sometimes I'm like, I don't know what to do. You don't really know where you're going, so you just kind of jump on something and then...
I've met that feeling a lot.
So, and you're just like chugging along, and then, is this right? I don't know, but it's going okay now. Right? So I picked biology because I was like, well, I think biologists work outside a lot, or you could maybe, and it seems challenging. And then you could do other stuff with that. So I was doing wildland firefighting in the summer, and then going to school during the school year, chugging along. I did undergraduate research while I was at Central, which it began to open even more doors for me. And that's what started the frog thing.
I was going to say, I want to know about this frog studying you did. So it seems so random, but not, you know?
Well,
I don't know.
One of my professors, Steve Wagner, who now, he does a diversity of things. He's moved on to beer. He does beer crafting now. So that's also something you can do with a biology degree. So keep that in mind, everyone.
Noted. When
your parents are haranguing you and you're like, I think biology, I might be able to segue into some beer. It'll be really good.
There you go.
But the frog thing started, undergrad we were doing population tracking. So you'd go out and this is literally, we go out, you catch frogs, and then you would insert a tiny tag in a really gentle way right into their leg so you could re-identify them, and then you'd release them. And you'd do that over and over again until you could collect enough to get some population estimates.
Yeah.
And that's where the frog thing started. I was like, dude, this is fabulous. I get to go out, once again, wander around, catch frogs, like process them, take all their cute little measurements, safely release everybody back where they need to be. And then from there, I started doing fungal studies, and I ended up with this amazing grant opportunity to do graduate school also at CWU under a National Science Foundation grant. And that's where I was like, ooh. And again, I think I need to pick something. I think I need to do frogs. I've been doing frog stuff, and I had a mycologist, which is fungi basically, and so we did frog egg fungus studies, and that's where that's like the conversation killer. People are like, what do you do? And you're like, oh, well, I study frog eggs and fungus that kills them. And they're like, oh, is that important?
Yeah.
You're like, of course it is. I wouldn't be studying it otherwise. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
But so I did that for my thesis, saprolegnia specifically. And doing grad school was, again, one of those things people are going to hate me for saying this, but I honestly, I mean, I'd thought about doing it, but the opportunity was just there, and so I did it. And oh wow, it was such a growing time.
Yeah.
It was really challenging. Academically, sure, but personally really challenging because you were really stretched in so many brand new ways.
Yeah. How so?
Well, I think anyone who's gone after, whether it's an advanced degree or a dream or something, an advanced degree is particularly when you're doing a thesis research project, depending on your program, right? Mine was I built my own, so I wasn't piggybacking off of anybody. I was given, my professor was like, why don't we look into this? Why don't you build this thesis, this research project yourself, answer these questions. And basically grad school is one endless litany of, you don't actually know anything about this, do you? And you're like, no. And they're like, you're not doing very good. Could you go figure that out? Okay. Yeah. And you do that over and over and over and over again until at some point you're finally like, okay, well, this is what I've got. And they're like, good enough. And you're like, oh, I bet feels great. Right. So I think that was such a growing season for me because it really causes you to get used to being uncomfortable. Because you're just constantly uncomfortable. You're uncomfortable because you're doing way too much. You're usually doing some TAing. Your days are just booked. I was also doing a grant where I was working in elementary schools, helping infuse curriculum with a real scientist and really sparking that natural interest that kids have in science and making it less about, labs are good, but let's ask real scientific questions, which are much more open-ended. You don't always have the answer, right? We always are asking why, and kids ask why all the time.
Yes, they do.
And so I was doing that and then doing my research, throughout the day and in between that, and you're doing classes. So all of that, you're doing a lot. And then on top of it, you're always expected to be a little better than where you've been before, or to know a little more, or you're presenting like, okay, I got draft X of my statistics done, and then someone will flip through and be like, I don't think any of these are right. You're like, oh,
redo.
I just okay, what do I do now?
Yeah.
So you just get used to being uncomfortable and being told you don't actually know very much. And you're like, okay, well, I guess I'll go learn more. I'll go figure that out. I'll be back. Or you figure out who to ask. There's a lot of that, which translates nicely to small business, to life.
I was just going to say, that had to have been like a huge crash course or building of your, just your ability to run a business, no, you're not good enough, and oh, you have to start again, and oh, one more time, you know? So it's really cool that you had that early on.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think what's so good for all of us to remember is, like, even if you've had a season in life that you thought was preparing you for something, right? You may end up in a totally different spot. So, right, you'd think, oh, Susan got her graduate degree, biology. She should probably go be a research scientist, right? Like, that's what she's gotten this training for.
Yeah.
For heaven's sake, let's go use that.
Right.
And I was getting ready to, and then we ended up pregnant, and I was like, oh, gosh, life change. Wasn't planning on this. All this crying in my office, typing my thesis out. Oh, life change.
Yeah.
And so those aren't always bad, though. Like, that graduate school experience was not in business or small business or any of that, but it still equipped me with the skills that I personally needed to go in any direction I wanted to.
Yeah, and that's a huge point that you're making. Just because you think it's preparing you for something does not mean it's what you think it is.
And don't be discouraged, right?
Yeah.
When we end up and you're like, oh my gosh, these doors aren't opening where I think they should be.
Right.
Like, look around. Maybe they are.
Yeah.
Maybe they really are.
Yeah, and going back to, finding out that you're going to have a baby, I mean, that is a whole wide door going, there's a lot more in store for you in this avenue.
Yes.
So that's kind of a, a life changer for most of us, or all of us.
Yeah. And I think especially when some of us are real planners. I don't feel like I'm always, like, planning my life out years in advance.
Oh, I used to.
Obviously, I don't do a very good job at that, right? But I think most of us have, like, an idea of where we're going.
Yeah.
And then the older you get, I was just talking to my mom about this today, the older you get, the easier it is to sort of let go and just, like, no, this is life.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree with that. A few more life experiences under your belt, and you're like, okay, I think I know something.
Yeah.
But then, you might have to go back.
But then you don't know. Then you know what you don't know, which is even more frightening.
Right. Yeah, I try not to think about that too much. All the things that I don't know yet. Just going to focus on these things right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So after you found out you're going to have a baby and you're starting this family, obviously a lot of things changed for you.
Yeah. So I had just done my defense, which is like your oral presentation of your project in front of the faculty and staff and whoever wants to come see it, which you're like, oh, there's going to be 1 million people there. Well, at CWU, I didn't book the place, but I did have plenty of people there. And then we went out and enjoyed ourselves afterwards. Obviously a little too much, because the next month, ta-da, surprise!
Lovely.
And so I remember telling my husband, I was like, oh my gosh. And ironically, my husband had taken a job here in Tri-Cities. And so I was, as per the usual, I was continuing to juggle a job doing school stuff still. I was still working on, like, kind of a new position within the same grant and loving it. So I was doing a bunch of driving, going back to Ellensburg to work in my office in my job, and finishing up my thesis, which was now down to the, like, annoying typing part. And back then, I've found out this has changed now, but back then you really had to print it out on pieces of cotton paper and then march it over to the office, and they would get a ruler out and, like, make sure your margins.
Are you serious?
Oh my word. It was just agony. And you're like this poor graduate student still, and so you're, like, spending all this money on this cotton paper, and you're like, it better be right this time.
Right.
It's because they would bind it into books. So if you need to read my thesis, it's in the library at Central. So just pop by sometime.
Okay.
Check it out. I mean, that'll be really handy for you.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Really informative.
I'm sure it is informative, but, in my realm, I might make it in that direction. Who knows? I don't rule anything out.
That's right. I mean, keep your options open.
Yeah.
So all this is going on, and my husband was living in Tri-Cities. Anyway, so I came back over here, right? And I was like, hey, sweetie, ta-da, we're pregnant. And that was after doing a lot of crying on my own already, like, oh, I'm so excited, but I'm not, how do we adjust to this? And I was kind of, I hadn't applied anywhere, but I had been sending out emails to different PhD programs, kind of talking to different advisors that I was interested in, seeing if I could grease any wheels in that direction.
Yeah.
And then I had this sort of realization with this positive pregnancy test, which I think comes for most people when you're like, whether you're planning to have a family or I think a lot of us, a lot more than people probably admit, you just get pregnant.
Yeah.
It's this moment of just absolute, like this is a moment of decision for me because life has changed whether you want to admit it or not. Like at that moment, everything changes. And so I finally just sat down and I was like, I don't really want to go get my PhD and have a brand new baby.
Yeah.
Like, maybe I still want to do that, but I just don't want to juggle those two things. I've already, like, was still feeling so burnt out from grad school, just doing my master's degree. And we would have had to move. I mean, it would have been really epic. And so I sort of just, like, packed that all in a bag, right? In my head, in my mind, in my heart. Okay. And then just sort of had an existential crisis. Like, all right, well, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to grow a baby. And my grant position's up in, like, I don't know, 6 more months. And then I guess I'll just, I don't know. Because it's, and I interviewed for a few jobs, and those didn't go anywhere. And you're pregnant, so there's just all of that.
That is such a weird, because I found myself in that position before where you're, like, 3 months pregnant.
Yes.
And you're like, I really should have a job still, but nobody's gonna hire me because I'm gonna have to take maternity leave soon. And you're like, well, maybe there's seasonal work, but then you have to be pregnant at the right time to have the seasonal work.
I know. And again, I was, we were financially in a position where my husband could be our breadwinner, so I feel so blessed by that, right? It did give us that freedom to flounder around. And then I finally was like, I think that's the other thing is when you're at this crossroads of like who am I if I'm not like doing something? Because I was basically just going to be a baby grower for a while, and then I was going to be a mom, and like, is that enough?
I used to ask that question all the time. It's such a weird place to be, especially the first time. So weird.
It's so weird, and so there I was, right? And it felt especially, I don't want to say painful. That's sort of, it was just harder for me because I felt that because I'd just been handed this diploma, which was like, way to go. Way to get a graduate degree. Go change the world. Yeah. And then I was like, I'll just set this over here while I step into my mom role. Yeah. Right. And that was, and what was really hard about that for me is because anyone who knows me now or knew me back then, I'm the biggest rah like moms, being a mom, you do that. Of course you do that. Yeah. I mean, you can do that with other things, or you can do that all by itself. Yeah. I mean, any way you cut the cake up, you rock it, sweetie. Right. But to myself,
we're so much harder on ourselves.
I was like, well, we'll see what you can do. I mean, if that's enough, I don't know. Just having a baby and being a mom, what will that be?
Yeah. Yeah. So was that intimidating, or would you say it was kind of? Because you've got so many things that you're juggling, or we're juggling. Yeah. And to go from that to just that.
It was agonizing.
It is. I agree with you there. It is.
And I think that when I tell people that I'm a different mother than the mother I thought I would be, that's sort of where it started. Was I thought that I would be able to just embrace motherhood or my new identity as a mother, you know, going from woman, Susan, who does all these things and is always, you know, seeking out these opportunities and jumping on all these things and loves to juggle things, busy, to stepping into well, babies just slow you down, not because they're trying to, but because they're babies and they need you. Yeah. And it's hard. Yeah. Right. And so there's that part of being a new mom. And then the agony of my new identity of like, you're not going to get a lot of things done right now.
That's so hard to swallow. So hard.
And at the end of the day, you're like, what did I do? And you're still wearing the same clothes, only like stinkier.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, well, at least everybody was fed today and they're clean.
Maybe.
I may not be,
right.
But yeah. Yeah. And that is a huge accomplishment as a mom. And especially in those early days when you're sleep deprived and you don't remember what day it is. And you're just constantly living on like a 2 to 3 hour schedule, that feeding schedule.
I know. And when moms are like, I don't know. I mean, I'm doing okay. I'm always like, no, you can say you can say it's really awful. It is.
Yeah.
I mean, this is called torture.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not bad. It's not good. It just is.
Right.
It's just the way it is.
And I think that that's a good thing to remember, especially as a new mom. I think, actually, I take that back. I think that's a good thing to remember all the way through. Because, I mean, my oldest is 8, and some days I'm just like, oh my gosh. Okay.
Well, and I think that's really helped me in my mom journey.
Yeah.
Is interacting with women, really, but especially mothers of different seasons of life, right? So, brand new babies, your toddler years, your and then even like after kiddos have left the house, flown away, and listening to the just the great wisdom those different seasons bring to you. And I love. If I could say anything to women, I would say go find someone who's a lot older than you. Like, try to find someone who's got, like, 30 years on you. And befriend them.
Yeah.
Because those women, they're enough ahead of you in life that when you're coming to them and you're saying, oh, my gosh, I don't know, let's see. So let's say, like, today, I was, like, trying to have a phone conversation, and in the background was my son, like, throwing, I don't know, there was loud crashing in what we call the toy room. Okay, it's a closet, okay? It's a closet. We put toys in it.
There you go.
It's a walk-in closet, so it's the toy room, quote. And then you hear all this screaming from my daughter, and I'm just like, and this goes on all morning, right? Like, it's just one act. I'm like, oh my gosh, and it's raining, so I'm like trying to kick him outside, but they can only last out there so long because we live in Eastern Washington, and being wet is really hard for us.
Right.
And so I was talking to my mom is the woman, and I have another woman I like to talk to a lot, Chris, who's my lactation mentor, and she goes, oh, I know, sweetie, isn't it just hard? Oh, and just her validation of that, but then hearing her also continue to speak wisdom just from her. She's just in a different, she's nearing retirement. There's nobody messing up her house.
Right.
She's got other things, other stresses. Her relationship with her children is more of a adult friendship. And it just reminds me, like, okay, this isn't forever.
I can do this.
And I pick a word for every year. And this year's word is embrace for me. And so I'm really, really trying to lean into the things, particularly that I find hard or difficult or uncomfortable. So, like, my kid's fighting nonstop while I'm, like, trying to have this pleasant, short, 15 minutes. Come on, kids, keep it together.
Right. That's too long.
It's too long. Right, well, actually, it's just that they're like, oh, look, she's on the phone. Now would be a good time.
It's like the beacon is up. Oh, like, mom's busy, or mom's on the phone. We should probably do something.
She probably needs me over there next to her being really loud.
Yeah.
So just anyway, just find the wisdom there from the women who are older than you. That would be my takeaway there.
Yes. So everybody that is listening, go find that person.
Yes. Go hunt them down.
Yes.
Make sure they're stable and healthy.
Yeah, I guess those would be good things to add in there.
We don't want to take on any problems older than us.
Yeah.
We just want wisdom.
Yes.
Lots of wisdom.
Yes. So going back to this new stage in life, where you're trying to figure out, okay, I'm going to be a mom. I'm going to, like you said, grow this baby.
Yes.
And I'm going to just do that. And what kind of transpired during that time?
Well,
like, what pushed you, like, how long did you kind of sit in that zone?
Yeah,
is
exactly.
what I'm saying. Because we all have that point, I feel like, for my first 2, it was about a year.
Uh-huh.
And then I was like, oh my gosh, I need to do something.
Mm-hmm.
And with my son, our last child, I lasted a little longer. He was almost 2, and I was like, okay, I really need to do something.
Yes.
So.
Yes. So I'm trying to think back. So the problem was I had just finished up an intensive 3-year period where I did nothing but research, right? So just getting and gaining and assimilating information in my brain. And so I found myself at home doing a lot of research about babies, but I didn't read baby books. Apparently I somehow was blessed with the knowledge to just skip that part.
Yeah.
Right? Because it just causes way too much stress. Yeah. Way too many expectations. So maybe I should have prepared a little more on that. But whatever. But I researched cloth diapers because I was like, well, gosh darn it, I am not going to fill up the landfill. I'm going to save the planet, obviously.
Yes.
As a new mother, that's my new passion. And hours upon hours researching cloth diapers on the internet. Which then after our kid was born, I was like, look at these cloth diapers that I purchased using savings out of a piggy bank.
Yeah, because they're expensive.
They can be really expensive. Yeah. So I had to shop around, and I bought some super cheap ones, and then used Craigslist ones from people that didn't seem too shady.
Right.
Scoping them out. Maybe I'm not here today. I don't know. And so then my son was about 4 months old. So how long did I last? Hardly at all. Yeah. Before I was like, you know what I'm going to do? Sweetie, let's remodel the garage because we have this this really tiny house, and then it's a quote 3-bedroom. It's not a 3-bedroom. It has an unattached garage that has a converted room in it, and we would call it the spare room. And that was nice if your guests really like to step out into the cold and then walk into the house.
Oh my gosh. That's very convenient.
It's so nice. Yeah, but you can just lock them outside because the anyway. So I was like, let's convert that. And what had been really growing in my heart was a lot of loneliness. Because after you're brand new in town, and I was so busy for the first part of my pregnancy, and then your 3rd trimester, I pretty much just napped constantly.
That sounds like the 3rd trimester.
Right. I really admire women who show up to work every day and then their water breaks at work and they're like, I guess I'll have the baby today. I would have been napping at work, the cot in the back. It wouldn't have been a joke. So I was napping a bunch, and then I had my baby, right? And I was so lonely. Yeah. I was so lonely that I didn't know a ton of people in town, and we hadn't been here very long. And I found that I'd been, I don't know, I think once you are a mother and you're done being pregnant, you're like, oh, I'll take this baby out and then I'll shop around for the other women who have kids and babies, and I'm part of that club now. But when you're pregnant, you sort of feel still awkward, all these ladies talking about how they don't sleep all the time. I don't sleep, but it's just because I'm peeing all the time. Yeah. Which is different. So
sure.
It's harder to connect. And I had a really, really, really sweet mom invite me over to her house for a play date. And I remember going over there with my giant belly one time before the baby came. And everyone was with their babies. I'm like, okay, I'll just be eating snacks.
Don't mind me.
Stress eating away on the couch. But that was sort of an in. So I started to sort of meet people, but I realized what I wanted to do, and again, it sounds kind of cute to me when I think back, but aren't a lot of ideas born out of this innocence because you just don't know. And if you don't overthink them or don't let other people rain on your parade, you just get to run with them, which is such a gift. So I was like, I'm gonna convert this garage, and then I'm gonna sell cloth diapers, and that'll help pay the bills of maybe we could move to a new location where it would be not my garage. So I'll start with that, and I'm gonna move a futon in there, and then women are gonna just drop by, and we're just gonna hang out. And then I'm going to grow that into a bigger concept eventually. But we're going to start in my garage.
Yeah. Right? Why not?
So it turned out really cute. I mean, I can't believe anyone ever stopped by, honestly, because it looked really sketchy when you drive up and then like, I didn't have signage out or anything because there was rules about this. And so
Sure.
People would like drive up and then I'd be like, hey, waving. Hey. They're like, oh, okay. But what really blossomed in that tiny little space, and those who remember the Buckwheat Bottoms home store, as everyone affectionately called it, I don't think there's anyone who's like, oh, that was okay. Everyone's like, oh, those were the best years. That was the best time.
Yeah.
And so, and of course what was really convenient about it being in my garage is like, I had a 4, 5, 6 month old, right, when this was just getting started. So I'd be like on Facebook, I'll be open this afternoon if anyone wants to drop by. I also have these diapers available, right?
Yeah.
And then people would drop by, and a lot of moms would pop in after like preschool drop off.
Oh,
and then we'd chat, and then they'd go pick up their kiddo and head home.
Yeah.
And these beautiful friendships started to blossom in that space. And I started to feel that connection of community where you may pick a few people that are really good friends, but then you're overall, you just feel like, oh, I belong here.
Yeah.
Right? I know these people. These are my people.
Yeah.
And that continued to grow until finally I was like, we don't fit here anymore.
But wasn't that a great feeling? Like, oh.
Yes, and scary.
We need to branch out a little bit.
Yes. But I think what surprised me is that I had that idea when I started it, and I wrote it on my like little yellow paper where you're like handwriting out your full business plan. No, it was like 3 ideas, and I was like, and I'll do this.
Yeah.
Every businessman is holding their head. Oh, don't do it that way.
But in this case, it worked. It
worked, and I kept it so low key that I honestly was just really shocked when it had grown. I mean, in cloth diapers, really, I think about it, I'm like, how in the world did we do that? And so me and my crew, my faithful customers in this little village that was starting to grow, we moved down to the Parkway in Richland.
Yeah.
Into another tiny little spot there, but it was perfect for us, and so we continued to grow in there, and that's where I had my first employees. So we actually had like real hours. That was a really big deal because it was less of this like, Susan will be there Tuesday afternoon and Thursday and then Friday morning unless naps are needed, and then we won't, right? Again, terrible business model. Don't do it that way.
Yeah.
But, and it continued to grow and grow and grow, and then we got pregnant with our second child while I was running this business. I also had opened a second kind of smaller branch in the Yakima area with a really amazing lady, Tara. She was managing it for me. And somehow she was just rocking and rolling. And I'd like drive to Yakima and we'd hawk our diapers. And anyway, so that was another like, again, I'm not sure now, knowing what I know, I would never write that into my business plan now, right? But at the time, we were just having fun. We were just doing it, and so we did that, and then I got pregnant with my second, and my husband decided he really needed a job change, and I was like, I think you're right. I think we need something different for our family. This isn't working. All of that together, right? And then I had some stuff change in the Yakima area, so I ended up pulling out of that area and rolling everything back to just Richland so I could focus. And my husband and I, after much discussion, he took a job that moved us to Walla Walla. And Walla Walla is like an hour-ish from Tri-City, so it's so hard because you're like, oh, that's doable.
Yeah.
And I've done that before. Ellensburg is where I used to work. That's like over an hour. I used to do that without children.
I was going to say, but now you've got a kid. Yeah.
So I have, and my son was 3 by this time. I'm pregnant. So we moved to Walla Walla. And that season of my life, the business was doing beautifully. I had the world's most amazing employees. These were women who were really as sold out for this business, this community as I was.
Yeah.
Who really just carried everything. I was floundering around in Walla Walla, and ended up we had our daughter there, And my husband and I were in such a rocky season of marriage. You know, marriage is,
yeah.
It's up, it's down. And that's sort of the beauty of it is
right.
when you come out of those really difficult times, you're like, oh, so amazing, in love all over again.
Well, and the best part is you get to take all of that.
Oh, yes.
And what you've learned in that season, and then you're like, okay, so we're not going to go into that pitfall again.
Let's not do that. That was not fun.
Of course, we're going to find another one along the way.
Don't worry.
But, yeah.
We'll do this again sometime, only something different.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was really challenging. And I just, by that time, I knew I was overextended. Mm-hmm. But I was way too stubborn to give anything up. I was like, I can still run my business and be pregnant and be a mom and like try to continue to be here in my marriage with my family and provide. I don't think I was doing.
I think I can.
I don't think I did any of it very well, but we continued to manage. And then I had my daughter. She was born in December. And then when she was 4 months old, I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's, right, which we talked about.
Right.
Which is a thyroid disease. Out of the blue, no idea. Apparently it's really common after people like overextend themselves. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? Should have told me that a year ago.
Where was the heads up, guys?
Right. No one? Okay. And it's common after pregnancy that thyroid conditions pop up.
Yeah.
And I didn't know. I mean, you don't really think about that stuff until it's in your face.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, so you just added another layer on top of that.
So I had a lot going on. And again, like the business was just chugging along, doing its thing. And this whole time what's interesting is like thinking about my pathway, right? I have no business training. I'm like, if you need me to talk to you about population dynamics, absolutely, let's do that. Gotcha. Or like disease transmission, absolutely. Or mycorrhizal fungi, on it. Mm-hmm. Business anything, I'm like on Google every day. Is there a better way to be doing this? Or like, why am I so terrible at this? Yeah. Cash flow management, right?
Well, that's where your researcher skills come into play.
That's right. I'm like, I don't know any of this. Oh, been there before.
Yeah.
You're doing a terrible job. Oh, okay. Great. Sweet.
Redo. Yeah.
I'll keep trying. Mm-hmm. So I again, like, I think that the me now would have stopped and been more reflective. Mm-hmm. But the me back then I was just doing it, right? I was just doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it.
Yeah.
And so I ended up with this thyroid disease, and anybody who has thyroid problems, hopefully, I guarantee everybody probably knows someone. I'm sure you know tons of people too, but they really can knock you on your bum because your thyroid runs your metabolism, your energy. It's tied to all your moods, your hormones.
Yeah, working as a personal trainer, if I had a client that had a thyroid issue, I automatically knew, okay, we need to really hone in here because it's going to be a challenge.
Absolutely. And I feel really lucky because mine, looking back, I know that I probably had underlying thyroid stuff going on a lot sooner, which I'm like, oh, I wish somebody would have looked into that with me.
Yeah.
But, you know, the symptoms are seemingly the same as like, oh, I feel a little tired sometimes. Well, maybe you should do less. You're like, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But
here we are.
Right. And so what I noticed was one day in the mirror, I was visiting my parents because, again, my husband and I weren't doing awesome. And so I was like, I'm just going to take the kids to mom and dad's, and we're just going to have a weekend away, if you're okay with that. And he was like, that's fine with me. Great.
Okay, bye.
Glad we're doing so awesome with our new baby. Oh, right. Hard season.
Yeah.
So I'm there, and I'm upstairs in their beautifully sunlit bathroom, and I look in the mirror, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what is up with my neck?
Oh no. And
it was like really swollen and kind of down towards the base of it. And because I have, a little bit of anatomy background, enough to be like, what organ would be there? Like, okay, your esophagus. Oh, it's my thyroid.
Yeah.
Ta-da. And then ironically, I had been at a women's retreat the following weekend, and my mom's friend was like, to my mom and I were at this retreat to women together. My mom's friend goes, hey, has Susan talked to you about her thyroid? What's going on there? And my mom's like, her thyroid, what? And so my mom's friend's like, well, does she know anything about it? It's really, really swollen. I thought for sure you knew about it. It looks serious. So then my mom, of course, is at this calming retreat to like regroup. She's like, what's going on with your thyroid? I'm like, I don't know. I just noticed it last weekend. I haven't even gone to the doctor yet.
Yeah.
So I go in. They're like, oh, you just have Hashimoto's. No big deal.
I'd been like, what?
Yeah, exactly. I'm like nodding. Okay. And of course, like, every mom everywhere knows that it's not just me at the doctor's office. Like, of course I had to bring my kids with me, right? I'm living in a place where I have little to no support system. I don't have any family nearby. So I'm like, all right, kids, let's go to the doctor. So my 3-year-old, of course, is like unpacking the drawers in there.
Yeah.
I'm like
You know what's weird about that is I was in the doctor's office a couple weeks ago, and I never really go to the doctor unless I have to. And so I was in there for, it ended up being sinus infection or whatever, but
right.
It was like so fascinating to my older two because they see me up on the table and I'm getting checked out, and they're like, what? Mom, is everything gonna be okay?
Yeah.
Like, wait, we're here. Like we had been sitting in the lobby for like an hour, and they didn't realize that, oh, mom's here to go to the doctor, right? So yeah.
Yes. So the tables are turned,
Kids and
right?
doctors.
Yes, I know. And especially, exactly. 'Cause when do moms ever go to doctors? Unless you're like, I think I might be really seriously ill. I better go. So, right. So then
in your case, which was true, yes.
Right. And I should be there. So that was really good. And of course, like, I'm trying to digest all this information while, like, of course, I'm like, oh, I think she needs a nurse. And, like, trying to juggle my 4-month-old and then wrangle my 3-year-old.
Yeah.
And he's like, it's no big deal. Just take medication, and it'll be hard to adjust your meds at first. But then once your thyroid burns out, which is kind of what's going to happen because your body's just kind of slowly killing it off, it gets a lot easier to medicate. And I was like, oh, all right. And he's like, so just stop by the pharmacy later. I'll have your prescription called in. I'm like, oh, okay. And of course, right, you can never think of questions to ask.
Not when you're there. No.
No. And you go home and you're like, well, I didn't.
Yeah.
I have 1,000 things to ask, but in the moment, you're just frozen. And I always get so nervous at the doctor, which I have so much awareness now because as like a lactation professional, right, you're marching into people's homes or they're visiting your office, and you're like, hey, let's talk about your breasts and breastfeeding, right? And you're like, I bet you feel really nervous. They're like, yes, I don't really want to do this right now.
Yeah.
Because I get so nervous at any sort of doctor visit.
Yeah.
So anyway, there you have it, right? And so I go home and kind of process all this and start, of course, Google, start doing some research on it and trying to find out, okay, what do I have, and I guess it's lifelong. And that was so discouraging. I mean, I'm so thankful that there's medication for so many of us, and that, I mean, it's a really treatable thing, absolutely, but it still is really discouraging to suddenly be like these things you're feeling, so like the fatigue, the brain fog, I just couldn't function, and I couldn't think, and it was really frustrating because at that point I'd done a little maternity time away from my business, which my employees were so beautiful at protecting that for me. Yeah. But I was really trying to pick up more of it again, and as you always do with small business, you're always having to reinvent everything and reassess, where are we going? What's the money maker? What's the mission? What's the... Yeah. But I couldn't focus. And it was like, it's not just because I have a newborn. I really my brain feels broken. I've never felt like this before. So I do some poking around and find out sometimes people get healed from this. You read these weird blogs and you're like, oh, what's the resource on this? Is this, can you trust this? I don't know. And I decided to go get a second opinion, and I have always heard of a naturopathic doc, right? I'm like, oh, that sounds cool, but I'd never gone to one. I hardly ever go to the doctor, right? Right.
So why would you see this doctor?
Right, why would you ever go? Yeah. And especially because a lot of them aren't covered by insurance and all that jazz, so until you're like, oh gosh, what to do? So I looked one up in Walla Walla and found this amazing doctor, and I ended up being a cash pay patient, which of course now, and again, doing lactation consulting, I run a cash-based practice because I'm just like, let's just keep it, low key, low cost,
Yeah.
You pay me, and if you need to, reimburse for insurance. But so you have to really make a decision, though, when you're like, oh, I'm going to have to really just like fork out some money for this. And I finally decided my health is worth it. I'm worth it. And and that was sort of the initiation of this new season where I started to say, whoa, whoa, whoa. Why are you doing all the things you're doing? And where are you going? Are you taking time to pause? Are you taking time to reflect on what you're doing? Or are you just doing? And there's a difference between those, Susan. You've got to start thinking.
Yeah.
So
I'm glad that you point that out, though, because there's a huge difference.
There's a huge difference. And I think part of that comes with maturity of age, and I think also just life as it comes at you, especially the life you're not picking.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, here, nice. Thanks.
Right.
So good. But so I'm at this doctor's office, and she was really the game changer for me because I went in and she looked through my labs and we talked, and she really validated. I remember her. She was on her little doctor stool, right, the wheelie one that the kids love to push all over the place and smash into the door.
It's a giant toy.
It really is. It's brilliant. They have those in there. So nice for us moms. And she like wheels her chair right in front of me, so we're knee to knee, and she looked me right in my eye and she goes, "You're not crazy. You're sick, and we're going to work together to help you get better." And to hear a care provider, because we'd already talked all the nuts and bolts. She talked to me about my labs and my blood work and what's going on biologically.
Yeah.
But then to hear her say that to me as like a caring provider who was like, I am going to be here with you and we're going to figure this out and you can trust me. And we'll start today. And I just went out to my car and just cried and cried and cried and cried because I feel like she'd offered me a little hope that whereas the other doctor had basically said, well, this is your new life, right? These symptoms, the way you're feeling, just take your medication. We'll just hope it kind of evens things out a little bit. But you're just going to feel like this, and I'm sorry. It's just... And I was really just praying a lot, like, okay, Jesus, if this is what you want for me, help me to really embrace this. Help me to get used to the new me. Yeah. And I'll really work hard at, meeting my new self in this space. But if it's not, please, right? Please make it not.
Path. Yeah.
Please make it not.
Yeah.
And so I started working with Dr. M at Walla Walla Naturopathic, where she was, I think, the only doctor there at the time. She has a partner now. And so she and I worked for the next 2 years. And again, so I'm still living in Walla Walla. I'm still running my business through all of this. I roll. Right? And people are always asking me, like, have you thought about doing this with buckwheat bottoms? Have you thought? I'm like, yeah, I think yes. Yes is the answer. Yeah. But, like, I can barely keep myself together. And ironically, I don't think very many people knew how bad I felt or was doing, how hard I was struggling. And I really buckwheat bottoms was really known for being like this great place for authenticity, but as the leader of it, I just was so busy just doing it to make that space for everyone else to come and be authentic and enjoy. And then I'd kind of go home and just like fall to pieces, right? And again, would I do that again? I don't know, but that's how it was. And I started to heal almost immediately with Dr. M. My mood started to stabilize. My brain fog started to lift. I was like sleeping again, which is another hallmark of postpartum depression, and that tangled up with like thyroid stuff. Oh, beautiful. So not only do you have a baby who needs to biologically wake often, but your body, even when you're like, oh, the baby's asleep, and you're like, did you want to stay up and worry about some things? Because I have a whole list we could get started on right now. Yeah. And sleeping, just don't do that. Who needs that? Right. So started sleeping, and my mood's really improved. So chugging through the next 2 years, it's kind of the same old, right? Raising kids, commuting back and forth between Tri-Cities and Walla Walla. Yeah. Sort of keeping it together. My business at that time, literally, I don't know, we just sort of chugged along. we moved to... we moved from the Parkway to a new location because as I started to get better, I was like, oh my gosh, let's do amazing things. I feel better now. Like, I can think. Let's make big plans. Would I do that again? Absolutely not. No. Terrible idea. Yeah. But we did it, and that space really did open up a lot of opportunities because it was bigger, and so we could have sort of more people and more events. We started really doing a lot more community outreach events, fun stuff for moms and families, and so that was all really positive. I think that a lot of positive things still happened during that time. Mm-hmm. But oh my word, I was going through such a personal revolution. Yeah. Through that 2 years I was in survival mode for a lot of it. And then as I started to heal and started to create that space to be reflective on, ooh, what am I doing? Is this where I want to be? Mm-hmm. But I think that's part of the hard part of life, is that when you're in a routine or in the doing, you have to be so intentional about breaking up with the doing. When you finally are like, I need a change. Yeah. So how did you even do that? So ironically, we're in Walla Walla. My husband gets a job offer, and so we come back to Tri-Cities. Okay. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is such an answer to prayer. I'm back in Tri-Cities. I can run my business. I'm gonna really like pick up all the pieces. We're gonna rebrand. And I get back here, and I suddenly realize, like, my heart is just not in this anymore. I'm just going through the motions. And anybody who runs anything small, when it's like your own ideas,
it's your baby.
It's your baby. If your passion isn't there anymore and it's just become a job, things get really, really hard. And it shows. It really shows. And it was really showing for me, and I knew that. And, you know, the business was like chugging along, and then was like, and I was like, it's me. It's because I'm not providing leadership. I'm not here to infuse the new ideas that I used to be doing. And my employees are working their tails off. They're doing a great job. They're amazing women. But what this place needs is somebody different. Yeah. So what I thought was going to happen is we'd move back to Tri-Cities, and then I'd keep going on this pathway. And what actually happened is we came back to Tri-Cities, and I was like, I can't anymore. Yeah. I can't do this anymore. And because of all of the health problems I'd had with, you know, literally laying at home on the couch or just being in such a depressive fog for so long, I was like, I get to choose what I want to do right now. What a gift. Not everyone has this gift of just having this choice in front of them. And I really want to take advantage of that. I don't want to look back on this time and be like, I was just doing it because I was just doing. And so, and what really initiated it is my manager, Melissa. One day she was like, I think we might move. And I was like, oh, well, that would be so exciting for you guys. Because it would have been. But that was that moment of clarity where I was like, oh my gosh, if she's not here, I would have to either hire a new manager or I'm going to have to step into that role. I can't think of anything worse. And so it really forced it. She didn't move. But it was that moment that gave me, and that it was that day I set aside the business plan I'd been working on for the next 3 months. Yeah. And pulled out a new one and titled it Business Sales / Closure. And cried, of course, right? Because when you've put that much passion and energy, and the other thing is because I'd seen the power of my storefront to create beautiful community and bring people together. And at that time we were doing things like clothing swaps, we were doing classes, we had a mom's group. Chris, who was my lactation mentor, she'd come and started volunteering at the store, and I'd finally, at our new location, had like this cute little lactation room for her to use. And she and I had been doing that together. I was loving that. Yeah. And I knew that by titling this new paper this way, it was like the beginning of the end for me of the season. And it was like a huge weight had lifted, of course, because when you're under a burden of I should, it's heavy. But when you shrug off the I shoulds and finally step into the freedom of maybe where you want to go, where your passions are calling, or the freedom to do or be who you are, then things are so much lighter. And so I shrugged off the I should keep the store open. I should look how positive this is in the community. I should be here. I should be the one doing this. And I opened my hands up and I said, okay, and I pray about everything now. That's new since, when you're kicked on your butt and laying on the couch a lot, what else should I do? I guess I'll just pray a lot of angry praying and crying, and then slowly my heart got softened. But I opened, whatever you want to do, I trust that you'll put that into my hands, and I trust that by letting go of this, good things will happen. And started that process. And what was really, really hard is, so I mentioned the lactation stuff. I'd been doing that with Chris mentoring already for a year and a half by that time that we had officially started working together. And of course, at first it's just like boring observing, and you're sitting there like, oh, hi, don't mind me over here.
Sure, go ahead.
Right.
Pull out that boob.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure this isn't awkward for you at all. But learning a ton, and then we'd go do some home visits as those popped up, and I'd started doing some more education, going to classes, traveling, all kinds of good stuff. And I was really falling in love with that. And what was really hard, and what I couldn't get my head around, is I was like, if I sell the store, I won't be able to do breastfeeding help anymore. Right? I was just stuck there.
Stuck.
It was all tied together, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. How will I ever do this? And of course, my mentor, Chris, who is 30 years older than me, that's why you got to find this woman.
All right.
She was like, Susan, why are you hanging on to this? This isn't fun for you. And I was like, well, the breastfeeding stuff, the lactation stuff. She's like, well, you could do that however you want to, really. I mean, do you want to have this business still? And I was like, no, absolutely not. She's like, well, then why don't you let go of that and do something different? Well, why
do you gotta make it sound so easy?
Exactly. I was like, well, when you say it like that. So I just was focused really on the store and kind of like set the breastfeeding stuff down, and Chris was like, I might move too. And I was like, oh gosh, everything terrible is happening once again. So I ended up selling the business, which was a miracle and amazing, and we were all really excited, and I kind of pushed them off with everything I could give them and gave them all their new plans. And then after we signed the papers together, I remember like leaving my key with them and walking out, and it was so bittersweet, because it was, any of those big pivotal moments we have in our lives, they're that equal mix of like the change, right? And change can be so good, but it's that pause, that bookmark on, you're never going to go back here. It's never going to be like this again.
Yeah.
And one of my real personal struggles is to see with pride where I've been. So that's why you asking me about a lot of this stuff has been really like cathartic for me to write through. Yeah. Because when I write it out and tell it endlessly like we're doing now, I'm like, oh my gosh, look at all the things I've gone through, look at all the places I've been, all these amazing opportunities. What a cool life that person, myself, has had. But when you're the person living it, sometimes you're like, I can't, it's hard to see it.
I find that a lot at blogging, because I do a lot of blogging, and it's just what you're saying. If you because of course we've got these amazing things like Time Hop and stuff that remind us of things that we've posted, and I'm like, oh, that blog, that was a year ago. What was I doing a year ago? Yes. Oh my gosh, that's where I was a year ago. And that was 1 year. Like all the things that we could potentially be doing or maybe not doing, depending on what we're working on. Like, oh, I'm still in this space, and that's okay.
That's okay.
So I find that a lot in blogging and writing everything down.
Yes, writing. Obviously, I love it.
And you're really good at it, by the way. Reading through your stuff, I was like, wow. Well, thank
She's
you. Really good at this.
Thank you. I'm glad you appreciated that, because I just kept typing, and then, as you're, going along, you're like, well, that's page 3. Let's see if we can wrap this up soon. But it was really fun, and so at that moment, I left my key, left the store. My husband was waiting in the car. Of course, the car is just jam-packed full of crap. Yeah. I don't know, whatever's in there that I was like, they're like, we don't want that. Can you please take it? I'm like, sure, I'll take the 6 random buckets. I don't even know why they're here, right?
Yeah.
Car's just jam-packed. And I sat down, and he was like, well, how's it feel? And I was like, good, I guess. And that's sort of how, right, life transitions can be. I think it's good. Some are really, obviously happy.
Yeah.
And some are not as clear.
Sure.
So we drove away from that. And then I once again was like, I am just going to be a mom now and also do breastfeeding stuff.
Nice.
Because I can't stop. But truly at that time, kind of as the sale progressed with the storefront, I was so struck by oh my gosh, this is something I could much better balance the way I want to balance it. And how important is that to say to each individual person, stop looking around at what everyone else is doing. Mm-hmm. What works for you? Yeah. Oh my gosh, I need that tattooed. No, I need it on someone else's forehead so I can look at it really. Right. But, so I finally was like, okay, well, what would work for me is I really want, my kids are still pretty tiny, and what I want right now, if I'm asked, and I've been given the opportunity with the way our family is right now, to just be at home with them and then do something on the side. And that balance is what's perfect for me. Yeah. Because it gets my passion out of my system, the thing I love to do, the thing I want to do, and still allows me to pour into my children the way that I want to right now. Right. And I gave myself a ton of freedom in saying, remember, Susan, like you were just saying, in a year, things could be so different. Yeah. And you're welcome to change at any time. Right? Mm-hmm. Remember that freedom you have. Remember that freedom you have. Don't listen to the I shoulds. Those are so loud. Yes. Do what works for you guys. Yes. So you talked a little bit about your mentor already. Yeah. So did that journey continue with her? For a little bit. I was at that point, she was like, I don't know what else you want me to mentor you on. I was like, I don't know, I just need more. And she's like, what else do you need? And of course, that's part of any profession, or ideally any person, right? You're never complete. Mm-hmm. So I think I just kept waiting to be like, okay, you're ready now. And I'd already ticked off a bunch of boxes. I got my breastfeeding educator certification, and then went and did some more tongue tie training and more, anyway. Yeah. Lots of different classes and training. I already hit. And Chris is like, I don't think continuing education is going to be a problem for you, Susan. I was like, obviously. She's like, maybe spending too much money on that will be a problem.
I know. I come to my husband all the time. Oh, I'm going to go back to school for this. And he's like, okay. I'm like, no, then I'm going to go back to school for that. Okay.
I know. The endless ideas. I'm like, and then I'll go. And so we kept working together a little while longer, but she basically kind of pushed me out of the nest. And she's like, I think you need to just decide what you want to do with this now. You can either go into private practice, or and you can really take this wherever you want to go. And then of course she was getting ready to move. These people moving, they really cause these rough stops for me. I have to make a decision now. So that sort of organically came about. And I still, of course, use her as well as other professionals that I know to bounce trickier cases off of. I think that's best for my clients, and it's good for me, still being relatively new in what I'm doing. Yeah, but you see a lot of people that do it all the time. They'll have a group of other people that are in the same profession to kind of hey, have you encountered this? Or what do you think about this? Which is what I think that's good care, particularly in healthcare. I think that anytime we get cocky and we're like, oh, I've done this a million times, it's not a problem, then that's when you're not coming into it with totally fresh eyes and saying, okay, with no assumptions, I'm just going to take an assessment of what's going on here. I'm going to listen really loudly to the story. I'm going to use my clinical expertise to kind of evaluate what's going on. And then from there, we'll put it back together.
Yeah. You know, I think this is a perfect spot for this because I had to pull this from your writing because I was reading through this. I was like, oh, she's a really great writer. And well, I'm just following the story. And then I came across this quote in your writing as you're talking about your work now. And I was just like, that is such a beautiful way to phrase that. So I'm going to share this with everybody. It's story listening and then finding a way to pick up the threads we've been given and start weaving a beautiful tapestry for that family. And everybody's masterpiece will look a bit different. I adore that. It's like, that is so cool. Like, that little bit just, like, stopped me. I was like, that is somebody who is really looking at the whole picture. That is somebody who's not just hyper-focused on, okay, this is what I'm trained in, this is what I know, this is what we're going to focus on. This is the idea of taking those expertise and then applying them to as many different areas in somebody's life as you can. And I thought that was beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's what I love about my story and where I'm at right now. As a lactation professional, right, so doing breastfeeding help, I just say breastfeeding help. I feel like lactation professional is so stuffy. So I just say I do breastfeeding help. So
yeah,
that is, I think what's so hard about it is that breastfeeding really shouldn't need a professional. But I think a lot of us, either if we didn't, we were like, I probably could have used one. Or if we had one, hopefully it was a good experience. Or you went in and you were like, I just was treated like I am in every other instance I go in for help. And they're like, put you in kind of like a box, like, your breasts look like blah, blah, blah. Or this is probably the issue. Or you're not really heard. You're saying things like, well, I think this is going on. And they're like, maybe. Just do this.
My experience with it, and I don't think... And I'm not saying anything negative against any specific person. I think it's just the way that it's done in most hospitals or most settings.
Sadly.
But, I mean, I ran across some really specific challenges having all 3 of my babies that were premature. So you already know that the muscle isn't going to be there and the latch probably won't happen right away and all these different things that just aren't going to happen. And so working with the lactation consultants there, it was, it was so, like, you come in and you sit down and you start nursing and they're sitting there watching the clock.
Oh, gosh. Yes.
And then they're like, you should probably switch now. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, well, is he, what, did they latched right? And then at one point, like, my arm was all funky, and she's got her body all up in there, and she's like, you gotta do this, and you have to lift that like that. And I was just like, okay, are we there? You know, like, I'm in the most awkward position, and you want me to do this every single time? Because I have to do this every 2 hours, and I don't think that that's going to happen.
And are you going to be here to help me get in this obnoxious...
I mean, your arm is here, so you might as well just come home with me, you know?
Exactly. Oh, my goodness.
That was my experience.
Yes. Well, and the thing is, I think that's most of our experiences is that when we've gotten... So breastfeeding is really personal, right?
Yeah.
Like, our culture has sexualized breasts beyond belief. And so... For some of us, even you're like, I think I'm going to breastfeed. And the thing I hear most is like, I'm just going to try it. And I'm like, that's kind of like saying, Susan, myself, I'm going to try not to eat cookies when they're in the room. It's really challenging for me to not do that. So it would be better for me to say, like, can you please not bring the cookies in? Then I won't eat them. But we're just not even prepared for it. We're not even ready for it. And everyone's like, oh, breastfeeding's so natural. Well, it is for like 1% of women. And they're like, oh, I latched my kid on and then...
It was gold.
It was fabulous. I think most of us were like, yeah, breastfeeding. And that's why, I think that's why there's so many breastfeeding champions, is that once you've done it or struggled with it, or you're, quote, a breastfeeding failure, you feel that so heavily. You either feel the immense pride of it, like, oh my gosh, we fought for this. I can't believe we made it. Or you say, it was so hard and I finally just had to give up. It was not working. Or you say, it never worked.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of I statements of I. And so going back to this helping situation is we have professionals who come in and they're the you, like, okay, you should do blah, blah, blah. And then I, the professional, I'm going to do this for you because you're just not doing it and we need to get the baby fed. And literally as women, you're like, okay, 1, this is my body. 2, you're all in my space. 3, you're acting like I don't know anything, which maybe I don't know anything.
Yeah.
But can you not treat me like that? Also, I have to leave in like 15 minutes and leave you, the professional, here. And you basically just told me, I don't know anything about this.
Yeah.
And that I don't know how to do this. And you just manhandled me until they're like, oh, the baby's nursing now. And you're like, great. I can't.
How did we get here?
How do I do that? I don't know how to do that. And I don't ever want to make people feel like, oh, Susan never does that. Because I'm sure that I have or will have clients who are like, I feel like it could have been better. But my hope is always that I approach this, I guess, very much like I wrote, where I'm coming in and I'm not the baby feeder. This amazing woman who's brave enough to call me or reach out to me, her family is my focus right now. And all my job is to say, okay, what have we been given? Is it a preemie? Is it a tongue tie? Is it an older baby who all of a sudden won't breastfeed? What are the issues? What's going on? Or is it just mom is just broken down because things just aren't working and we don't even know why? And you start picking up all those threads and you say, okay, well, we can't change anything. This is what we got to work with, right? Let's start putting it together. And my hope is always that when I leave, when people look back on the story, I'm just a part of that. It's not like, oh, Susan breastfed. No. No. I was there to help you start weaving. Yeah. And then at the end of the day, I hope when you look back, it may be a very different tapestry, if you will, than when you're like, you know what I really like? Is I like yellows and blues, and you end up with like hot pink and lime green. You're like, that is it's not really my style. But I hope when we look back on it, we can still be like, oh, there's still a lot of beauty in that. It's so different than what I thought was coming out of this. Yeah. But I still am I'm proud of it, or that was a really good choice for my family, or I just didn't know that I could do it myself. Yeah. And she really gave me the tools and empowered me to press forward because I'm not there. I really often, when I leave, especially home visits, I always want to be like, okay, well, I'll just be downstairs tonight if you guys need anything. But what I'd rather do is equip and empower people so they can do things themselves, because I am just there to kind of push you off, to get you going, to be there as your sounding board. But really, it's you, and you're the parent. This is your journey, and you're doing an amazing job. You just probably need a little extra whatever. You have to have a team. You do. You have to have a team. You do. Raising kids and having kids. And oh gosh, yes. You have to have a solid team, and I think that the way that you're presenting this and the way that, you know, that stance that you take as far as, you know, I'm part of this team. I'm here to help support, and keep using the word empower, which I love. Yes. I love that. Yes. Because all of us women could use a little bit more of that sometimes. Yeah. Yes. And I think breastfeeding, especially because breastfeeding at some point along the way, because we're really unfortunately still very much a bottle culture. And that was just sort of it's just a time. It was a culture. It was a thing. I don't think very many of our parents were often breastfed. You were usually sent home with the hospital with like a recipe for some, looking back, you're like, oh, how are they still alive? Which should give us all great confidence, no matter how you feed your baby. Yeah. Everybody's fine. It's gonna be okay. Yeah. And I mean, if people survived on like corn syrup and evaporated milk, I'm sure that, you know, it's gonna work out. We're gonna all manage just fine. But I think that's really something that I always grieve, because I feel like breastfeeding is, and that's why I think we do grieve it just as women if breastfeeding doesn't work, or there's circumstances that don't allow you to breastfeed and you wanted to. We really heavily grieve that, because as a woman, it's something our body is kind of naturally attuned to do. But what's frustrating is that so often it doesn't work, not because the mom can't, or I couldn't do it, or my baby wouldn't. It's because we didn't get the support when we needed it.
Yeah.
And it's no fault of your own. It's that you've been let down repeatedly often by a system who was far too clinical, or just didn't know. And so I really hope to educate and empower women to say, this is my body, and I want to feed my baby this way, and I'm going to say that really loudly, and I'm going to figure it out. And I'm hoping, like you asked, what do you want to see in the future for breastfeeding in our valley? Oh my God. Well, let's change it. I think there's a lot of us who have these stories of just either poor help, or you didn't even know what to do, or even I often work with women who are like, I don't want to breastfeed full time, and I always say, okay, that's fine. Do you want to do it part time? Then they're like, yeah, I mean, I still want to do, but I just can't. Okay, that's fine. I need to listen to you. You're the mother. You're the one creating the story. You're creating your family. How can I support you?
Yeah.
And then those of us who are like, I want to breastfeed. If a woman expresses that she would like to breastfeed, we, the community, her healthcare providers, we should be behind her 110%, because yes, it's hard at first, and then it gets way easier.
Yeah.
And working moms need way more support than we give them. It's really hard to juggle life and then life away from your baby and maintaining all of that. And it gets easier, just like everything, but it's really overwhelming to start. And you feel like, again, I always feel like women are apologizing. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry I have to breastfeed. I'm sorry I have to go pump. I'm sorry. Why are we apologizing? Why? We don't need to be.
Yeah.
This is our gift, if you will, to our children. I mean, and that's part of my issue now that I have all this training in breast milk and breastfeeding. Oh my word. I have to always take a deep breath, because breast milk is so incredibly powerful that it seems the most immense tragedy that women who even express an interest in breastfeeding are not allowed or supported in getting there. Yeah,
I think that is so true in so many different areas of the process, and all the different physicians and people that you encounter in the process. And I mean, I love our children's pediatrician.
Yeah.
He is amazing. But there was one day that I didn't think he was so amazing.
Just
one day. And it's because I was really solid on the fact that I wanted to exclusively breastfeed our youngest. And I was like, no, like if I can, then I'm going to. And, you know, with premature babies, they're hyper-focused on weight and all of these things.
So hard.
And then, you know, the doctors in the NICU, you know, kind of make you feel like you're starving them. And you're just like, I'm sorry, I'm doing the best I can. And, you know, and this was at the point where he was already out of the hospital and everything. And so we went back, and I can't remember which checkup it was. He was only maybe 10 weeks, maybe. And they didn't see the growth that they wanted to see. It was a gain, but it just wasn't the gain that they wanted. And I remember him saying, you know, with these preemie babies, we just really have to pack on those calories. Here's some formula, here's this, you know, and it's okay if you can't breastfeed him.
Right.
And I was like,
is it?
I hear what you're saying, but I don't feel what you're saying.
Yes.
I feel something completely different. I'm like, but he still gained, you know, like I think that they definitely get caught in the trap. And I'm not a physician. I'm not a doctor.
No, they have a hard job.
I can't even begin to put myself in their shoes, but I'm curious what the hard lines are and where the gray area is, and doing a lot of research and Googling myself after this process and trying to figure out, okay, statistically, what happens in these scenarios with babies and the growth progression, and, you know, trying to find that gray area for myself to figure out, okay, what road do I go down from here, you know?
And I think what's hard is that nobody wants to be a mom who's starving their baby.
No.
Right.
Right.
I'm always looking at people and I'm like, we're going to feed the baby.
Yeah.
I mean, number one, we're going to feed the baby.
Yeah.
This is not a question.
Right.
And breastfeeding does not mean, okay, well, we'll feed the baby if the breastfeeding works. No.
Yeah.
We're going to feed the baby. We're going to ideally do it by supporting the mom and the baby together to do breastfeeding. And then above and around all of that, we're going to listen to the mother who is, moms are so amazing because they have this amazing intuition about their children. And sometimes breastfeeding is the right road for her. And if you want to do it, why are we just like, well, the baby needs to gain weight, you're breastfeeding, it's not gaining enough weight, so formula. I'm like, no, the answer should be, you want to breastfeed, you've been breastfeeding, not quite enough weight gain, how do we support breastfeeding?
Yeah. Like, because what do we need to look at?
And so then ideally they're like, oh, Susan Brady, you should call her. But no, I mean, that just doesn't happen. They're like, here's some formula because it's really easy. Yeah. It's like, this will put on calories for the kid. Without looking at the whole health picture. And again, going back to, why are we as women not being heard? What I said was, I want to breastfeed. Can you just meet me there?
Yeah.
And then again, like, if there really is a serious issue, I need you to better explain that to me. Right. So that I can have peace moving forward.
Yeah.
And I have had clients where breastfeeding was not a sustainable option for their family for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
I wish it was really cut and dry, black and white. Like, every woman can breastfeed. Yeah, they can. But unfortunately, some of us have baggage. Some of us have not gotten good support early on. Some of us have challenging life circumstances. Some of us have enormous health issues. It's all of that. And so...
And mental issues, I don't want to say issues, but mental struggles.
Absolutely.
Can bring on a lot of physical manifestations as far as, like, sensations and being touched in certain areas, and who knows what that person's experienced. So,
and I think that's where I really try to, again, listen. If I can listen to that woman, and my goal, especially with those cases where they have some past trauma, is to say, if you can't do breastfeeding, that's not you.
Yeah.
It's called, I'm sorry, this is in the past, and we can try to work through it together, and I'm going to be here, and we're going to make this as safe and as comfortable as possible.
Where were you 8 years ago?
I know.
No.
I know.
But I'm glad that you're doing this work for other people.
Right. And that's where I in my intake questions, like, I try to flesh out all of these. We talk about birth experience. We talk about, what are your goals? Yeah. You don't need to tell me if you don't want to, I've had women call me to help them wean their babies, which I'm like, that is amazing. That's what I hope a breastfeeding lactation professional, whatever you want to call me, the boob lady. The boob lady. That's why I hope you're calling me, is not just because I'm not just there for the women who are like, I'm going to breastfeed 100% no matter what. That's great, lady. I'm going to be there on your doorstep. We're going to do it. Yeah. But I'm also there for the woman who's like, this is really, I don't know about this. But I'm scared to stop, and I feel really guilty, and I feel heavy. Then let me come over, and we're going to unpack that together. And if weaning is the right option for you and your family right then, we're going to do it. We're going to do it safely and comfortably. Yeah. So you're not, and we're going to let go of the I shoulds, and we're going to move forward. Yeah. Right? And that's where I really see, again, like, this tapestry we're weaving, it's different for everybody. Yeah. And my role as a breastfeeding professional is not to impose some militant breastfeeding, scale, weight-driven thing, because breastfeeding isn't just about feeding a baby.
Yeah.
It's a mom and a baby, and it's a relationship that also happens to feed the baby nourishment.
Mm-hmm.
Ta-da!
Mm-hmm.
But we forget that. Because when you feed a baby a bottle, you just calculate out how much you just feed it to them.
Mm-hmm.
But when we breastfeed, it's a different experience.
Yeah.
And we carry that just a lot like birth. And people have a lot more birth trauma stories we talk about now, right? And these experiences where you as a woman are really challenged, and you feel a lot of identity in, particularly when you're like, I was the mom who wanted to breastfeed, and I didn't get there, and I'm a failure. How sad that that's ever an identifying moment for someone.
Yeah.
Right. And I really love to be able to talk with women about that, because we can, again, unpack that and reframe it, because most of the time it had nothing to do with you at all. It had to do with everything around you that wasn't right. And there's no need to stay there beating yourself up over what did or didn't happen.
Yeah.
And then I meet a lot of women because it's their like second, third, fourth baby, and they're finally like, well, it didn't go so well for the others. I figured maybe this time we'd invest in something. I'm like, great.
Right on.
Let's do this.
Yeah. But what an awesome opportunity and an awesome gift, because you think about raising these babies and you think about those formative days, those first bonds, and I know from my personal experience and from other moms I've talked to, if they don't feel like they've bonded the appropriate way to their baby, it is so heavy.
It's so heavy. Yeah. And breastfeeding, right, is so protective in so many ways, but the sort of beautiful agony of that is when things don't go as we want them to or as we had planned. It has equal power to be so heavy, which is where we see a lot of this. Unfortunately, a lot of the mommy wars on, well, you shouldn't be shaming the formula feeders. No, you shouldn't. You also shouldn't be shaming the breastfeeders, right? Like, we are just nourishing our kids.
Yeah.
Okay. And nobody can just at a glance say like, oh, so you're one of those. That's just not right. And so we really...
Go ahead. Formulate all of your judgment about me as I give my baby this bottle.
Right, exactly. Which is so... It's
or as
so
I unclip
unfair.
my shirt and public.
Right, I'm just trying to feed my baby. Or whatever that looks like. And so... and we carry all of that around with us. And so if we can just kind of take a minute to, again, like put the blinders on, focus on my story, my thing, and recognize like it's not always as black and white as that, and that's when I meet families, I really am growing and always trying to improve how I create that space to say, okay, what's going on? And then I host a mom's circle group.
Yeah, I saw those on your website, which is looking beautiful.
It's work in progress. Always things to add, to fix. But my goal with circle groups is to create just this space, kind of what I did at the storefront, only like in a little snapshot way, where we're bringing women together. And people are like, so they're breastfeeding groups? I'm like, no. I mean, you can breastfeed there, sure. It's sometimes a great place to practice if you're like, okay, not whipping this boob out anywhere else. Way too difficult.
Yeah.
Too stressful. I need all my pillows and everything, and I can barely put on real pants. So
all the pillows.
So you can just come to my circle group with as many pillows as you need, or I have them too, and you can come wearing whatever clothing you can find. It doesn't really matter. But the goal with those is to really create space where moms are connecting in an intentional way, and we're focused on being supportive of one another. It doesn't matter what your story is. We're there to listen. And I always tell people, we're not here to give advice. If you want advice, you better specifically ask for it. Yeah. Because otherwise, we're all just going to keep our mouths shut. So your baby's not sleeping a lot. Yeah. I don't think anyone else in this whole room is sleeping a lot. It's just called having small children, right? Yeah. And your toddler still sleeps with you. Yeah. I challenge you to find a house where little kids aren't crawling into bed with mommy and daddy. You know, and just a place where you're really validated as as you work through that agony, and I think my very jolting transition into motherhood, where I just was so hesitant to really embrace that motherhood is awkward. It's so slow. I mean, you used to go to the grocery store, or you're like, I'll just run a quick. Now when you have a new baby, you're like, let me change your diaper and then feed you, and then you'll spit up or whatever, or poop, and then I'll do that all. So to go to the grocery store, you allow 45 minutes. Then you drive there, the baby cries the whole time, so you're like covered in a cold sweat, right? You're like, forget distracted driving on a telephone. Like, does someone want to offer me like an assisted like taxi service for mothers? This is ridiculous. I shouldn't be allowed to drive. Because I can't.
The sleep deprivation alone should be enough, let alone the screaming baby in the back.
Maybe we shouldn't talk about this. They're rolling out new laws. We'll never
Good job. Well, I'll blame you. No.
Please do. Please do. So, and then you go to the store, and then you're in the store, and you can't even think, and then the baby has to eat again, or, oh my word, it's so cumbersome. And how I grieved, and still do, I won't even pretend I don't grieve, the ease of life with which you trot through. But it's so good, isn't it?
It is.
Right, I mean, I think
so
that's why, like, my word of the year is embrace, because, yes, I do feel all those things acutely. All the things in the blogs are like, what, 20 reasons why you should never have kids, and you're like, oh, well, I wish I could argue with that, but it's actually true. But that doesn't distract from all the amazing, wonderful things. And if we focus too much on all the stuff that makes motherhood slow and awkward and tiring, and that it's this new sacrifice of self, yeah, of course you're not going to really enjoy it, because none of those things are maybe, I mean, I don't think any of us are like, you know what I love is 3 hours of sleep a night. Broken, preferably into 15-minute chunks all night long. That would be fabulous for me.
Right.
But on the flip side of that, if you really just embrace that this season is going to be slow.
Yeah.
It's going to be messy.
You know, it's something that I've definitely taken a different approach at.
Yeah.
As I ventured into personal training, it was like, this is my business world and this is my mom world, and those two need to be separate, and this one's really planned out and has a schedule and, you know, has a plan, and this one I just kind of like shimmy in there, you know, as I do it.
As I can, yeah.
And I've really embraced that, no, I have 3 children.
Yeah.
And I have so much that I want to show them and teach them, and all of these cool things that we get to do together. But I also want a space to work.
Yes.
And everybody that I meet and I talk with and I encounter, they're gonna know that I've got 3 beautiful babies at home who depend on me for a laundry list of things.
Absolutely.
And I'm happy to provide to them, although tired and wore out and, you know, what have you at times. And I think that instead of trying to like weave that in the gaps, it's there.
Yeah.
Like everything gets to weave in the gaps of that.
Yes.
And it's kind of, instead of taking away from, it just kind of amplifies it.
Absolutely.
It's so crazy.
Absolutely.
Being able to take ownership of that role.
And I think, like, for me, because my oldest is 6 now, I feel like, how long has it taken me to do exactly what you just described, to quit trying to almost like layer my life and let it all just filter together. And there's such freedom in that.
Yeah.
When you're finally like, no, this can all coexist. That's fine. So you're a little rushed and you don't show up as professional looking as you used to.
This is just me right now.
That's okay. That's okay. Or if you need to do that, it just means getting a sitter a little earlier so then you can take that time. You know, you just take a little more planning.
And allowing that time for yourself.
Yes.
That's always good as a parent.
Very
allowing you time.
And that is really hard to learn also. Because it's, I think, again,
I always feel guilty. I'm like, oh, my baby. That's my baby. And I should be with my baby. But then I'm like, ooh. Helicopter parent much, right?
Well, and I think that when I was running my storefront, I ended up having, you can't do it all. That's such a lie. We're all told, like, you can do it all. And a really wise older woman, interesting, once again.
There we go.
She once said to me as I was excitedly talking to her about all my ideas, I just have so many ideas.
Yeah.
And she goes, wow, those are such good ideas, Susan. Well, you probably can't do them all right now. And I laughed. I was like, haha.
Watch me.
Right? And she goes, well, you can do them all, but just not right now. Yeah. And that was such a good moment for me to be like, oh, that's so true, that sometimes I'm trying to like rush through the season I'm in so that I can do all this other stuff. Well, a better approach is to embrace where I'm at and know that up ahead, like, new doors will open. Or if you really need to go for it right now, go for it.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Kids are real resilient.
Yeah, they are.
They really are. They really are. And we sometimes focus too much on the kiddos. Like, moms and dads are really important too. And if mom is feeling so depleted because she's just momming all the time, that isn't healthy for her family. It's really not healthy for her. And this goes back to shrugging off the I shoulds.
Yes.
I should be here with my kids all the time. Well, should you? What if someone else can love on them for a little bit?
Right.
That's great
Spread
too.
the wealth, man.
That's great too. I love my circle groups because often you'll see these, especially with the newborn babies. Although some mommies they do love, and they are the only one who really wants to hold their baby.
Yeah.
I fully support that.
Yeah.
But others are like, yeah, actually, if you could hold him for a while, I'm going to go get some snacks. And you see him just like standing over, not even in the circle. They're just like standing over there alone.
Breathing.
Right. No one's on me right now. And I think that's really what I want to foster in my circle groups is that it's like a tiny moment of, quote, the village where you're like, I'm going to be out for a minute. Can somebody else watch those ones over there? Those ones are mine.
Yeah.
But you got it.
Yeah.
I'll be back. I got to, I don't know, go pee.
Yeah. By myself? What?
Unsupervised. It's amazing. But I really want to model that and then foster that. And it's hard. I mean, I think it's a hard thing to let go. My best friend, she's a full-time working mom. She and I are like opposite ends of the mom spectrum. Yeah. She's like, oh my word, my maternity leave is just dragging on. She's like, I feel so guilty for saying that. I was like, no, that's honest. She goes, I cannot wait to get back to work. I just love going to work, and then I love coming home. And like, I'm the flip of that. Like, I like doing a little work and a lot of this messy at home. And I love that our friendship has really allowed space for us both to just be, that works for you? That's great. Yeah. And she often says, I don't get it. And I say, I don't get it. Okay.
Yeah. You need a friend like that, though.
Absolutely.
You have to have a friend that you can always find common ground with, but typically kind of is on the opposite end.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you're like, I would have never thought of it that way.
I think it brings such a crazy sense of clarity into a lot of situations.
Absolutely.
So not only do you need to find, a 30, plus
right, your mentor,
mom,
woman, wise woman in your life.
But you need an opposite friend.
I have a laundry list for people to do here. Oh boy.
We should write all this out for them.
Obviously. Yes. This is supposed to be empowering, but actually we're just giving you another thing to do. No, you
Sorry about that.
You can just stay on the couch. That's fine too.
Oh man. Okay. So I just really want to thank you. I want to thank you for coming here and sharing your journey and your process with us and giving us some insight to all of the many things that you've learned along the way and, allowing this mom to get out of the house and talk to another mom about mom stuff.
Me too. I left a whirlwind at home.
Oh, yeah? Well, I think that happens. I think that's probably 95% true every time we leave the house.
So, yeah. It's my trademark, really. I'm like, bye!
And I'm out.
I'll see everyone later. I'm sure it'll look about the same when I get back. Even if you did clean up while I was gone, it'll still look the same.
Yeah. Just embracing that.
That's right. Embrace. There
it is.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem.
This was really fun. And thank you for letting me tell my story. I don't know that I've ever had a chance to go back to Frogland.
Yeah.
Like, all the way up to current time, so hopefully people aren't bored to death.
I don't think so.
Listening.
I really don't.
But what a cool thing. That was such a gift for you to ask me to do that and to be here.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for listening. If you would like to help support Unraveling with Rain, go to patreon.com/unravelingwithrain. When you become a patron, you receive bonus content such as behind-the-scenes footage, along with other special content that you won't be able to find anywhere else. Music for Unraveling with Rain was provided by Barefoot Randy. Studio space was provided by Moody Logic.